Hello, this is Tony Heller from RealClimateScience.com, setting the record straight about climate. Parts of Australia are experiencing heat, drought, and fires this Christmas, and the United Nations 16-year-old climate spokesperson demands political action. She wants politicians to somehow lower carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere back to say what they were 45 years ago. These would be the same politicians who can't balance a budget or get anything else accomplished. We don't have to wonder what the climate was like at lower CO2 levels because we have lots of history to guide us. 45 years ago on Christmas Day, the city of Darwin, Australia was destroyed by Cyclone Tracy. 90% of these structures in Darwin were destroyed and the city had to be abandoned for about a year. The scene was total desolation, and this occurred at low levels of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Santa Claus never made it to Darwin that Christmas.
On Christmas Eve of '74, the warning sounded out. On all the broadcast stations, a great storm was near about. The boys and girls asleep in bed, tomorrow was their day. Their mums and dads all prayed the mighty storm would turn away. Santa never made it into Darwin. Disaster struck at dawn on Christmas Day. Santa never made it into Darwin. A big wind came and blew the town away. Christmas morning was a nightmare as Cyclone Tracy struck. It ripped apart the buildings like an atom bomb that struck. It twisted iron girders and it flattened all the trees. The might of such a cyclone must be seen to be believed. Santa never made it into Darwin. Disaster struck at dawn on Christmas Day. Santa never made it into Darwin. A big wind came and blew the town away. Many boats put out to sea, very few returned. Most were pounded on the rocks or in huge seas overturned. Australia was shocked and saddened as the news came through. A devastated city that must be built anew. The suffering and heartbreak to happen in this way, a natural disaster to come on Christmas Day. Santa never made it into Darwin. Disaster struck at dawn on Christmas Day. Santa never made it into Darwin. A big wind came and blew the town away. Santa never made it into Darwin. Disaster struck at dawn on Christmas Day. Santa never made it into Darwin. A big wind came and blew the town away. A big wind came.
At the time, climate scientists believed that a new ice age was coming fast. The top two scientists at the National Center for Atmospheric Research, Walter R. Roberts and Stephen Schneider, reported this. Boulder scientists see end of period of favorable weather. Observers of the global climate at the National Center for Atmospheric Research believe the favorable weather of the past 15 years is about to give way to a period of unstable climate, crop losses, food shortages, and death by starvation for millions. Underlying Schneider's ideas on food shortages is the knowledge that the world is moving into a period of cooler temperatures. 42 top American and European investigators met at Brown University. Then they sent off a letter to President Nixon warning of a new ice age in about a century. Time magazine was warning of another ice age. They said, telltale signs are everywhere, from the unexpected persistence and thickness of pack ice in the waters around Iceland to the southward migration of a warmth-loving creature like the armadillo from the Midwest. They blamed drought, floods, and every other imaginable type of bad weather on global cooling. All of the same things which climatologists now blame on global warming. Greta demands political action to stop global warming. But 45 years ago, climatologists demanded political action to stop global cooling. The climatologists wanted to melt the Arctic ice cap by covering it with black soot. The same year which Darwin was destroyed by Cyclone Tracy, the United States had our worst tornado outbreak in April. 148 tornadoes were detected in 24 hours on April 3rd and 4th, 1974. One can only imagine the mass climate hysteria which would occur now if we had a tornado outbreak like that again. 1974 was my freshman year at Arizona State University, and Phoenix had their all-time worst heat wave with 18 consecutive days over 110 degrees. Cyclones, droughts, floods, tornadoes, heat waves, all at lower levels of carbon dioxide. Greta wants us to give up our freedom, our lifestyle, and our money in order to return to the climate of 45 years ago. But the climate of 45 years ago was pretty bad. Now let's go back in time 90 years. This is an article from the Adelaide Observer from 1928. The author describes a road trip which him and his family took at Christmas. Out of doors, comments on nature, before and after, a Christmas bushfire. When spending the Christmas holidays by motor in the southeast, we had a good opportunity of witnessing the frightful havoc which followed in the wake of a bushfire. I'm not going to read through the article, but they describe the beautiful scenery they saw on their way out on their trip and the desolation they saw on the way back after the fire came through. Christmas bushfires are nothing new in Australia. 1913 was an extremely hot year around the world. California set the world's record temperature of 134 degrees in July that summer. One of Australia's most famous poets, Henry Lawson, wrote this poem. A bushfire. One Christmas time when months of drought had parched the western creeks, the bushfires started in the north and traveled south for weeks. At night along the riverside the scene was grand and strange. The hillfires looked like lighted streets of cities in the range. The cattle tracks between the trees were like long dusty aisles, and on a sudden breeze the fire would sweep along for miles. Like sounds of distant musketry it crackled through the brakes, and o'er the flat of silvery grass it hissed like angry snakes. It leapt across the flowing streams and raced o'er pastures broad. It climbed the trees and lit the boughs, and through the scrub it roared. The bees fell stifled in the smoke or perished in their hives, and with the stock the kangaroos went fleeing for their lives. The poem was by Henry Lawson, who wasn't widely known while he was alive, but became very famous later.
There's an Aussie we all know, where the western breezes blow. From north to south he's known far and wide. Henry Lawson was his name, but he never rose to fame until he crossed beyond the great divide. In a little place called Grenfell, when the gold was flowing free, and the miners and their money came and went. In 1867, when the town was on the spree, Henry Lawson, he was born there in a tent. He grew into a lanky lad when Gulgong was his home. His mind was bright, he had those itchy feet. He wrote a string of verses of the days he used to roam from the dusty track out back to City Street. He drifted with the drovers across the western plains, and he waltzed Matilda down the Lachlan side. From the Baku to the Murray, in droughts and flooding rains, oh, the bush was both his mother and his bride. He passed by plain and mountain and by burning desert sand, by shearing shed and lonely cattle camp. And when the beer was flowing, he was there to lend a hand with the mates that shared his life upon the tramp. He sang of wild bush brumbies, of teamsters and their teams, of outer tracks that only bushmen know. He saw the mail coach coming by plains and mountain streams, and he wrote about the lights of Cobb and Cove. He told of lonely men out back and women of the west, of folk that fought to live in factory towns. But the swaggies of the old bush school were those he knew the best, where the waters of the Darling wander down. He boiled his billy back of Burke and starved in City Park. He penned his poems in a shaky scrawl. But of all the old bush poets that have passed and left their mark, Henry Lawson was the greatest of them all. There's an Aussie we all know, where the western breezes blow. From north to south he's known far and wide. Henry Lawson was his name, but he never rose to fame until he crossed beyond the Great Divide. Until he crossed beyond the Great Divide.
Another famous Australian poet, Dorothy McKellar, wrote this poem, My Country. I love a sunburned country, a land of sweeping plains, of rugged mountain ranges, of droughts and flooding rains. I love her far horizons, I love her jewel sea, her beauty and her terror, the wide brown land for me. The stark white ring-bark forests, all tragic to the moon, the sapphire-tinted mountains, the hot gold hush of noon, green tangle of the brushes where lithianas coil, and orchids deck the treetops, and ferns the warm dark soil. Core of my heart, my country, her pitiless blue sky. When sick at heart around us, we see the cattle die. But then the gray clouds gather, and then we bless again the drumming of an army, the steady soaking rain. Core of my heart, my country, land of rainbow gold, for flood and fire and famine she pays us back threefold. Over the thirsty paddocks, watch after many days, the filmy veil of greenness that thickens as we gaze. An opal-hearted country, a willful, lavish land. All you who have not loved her, you will not understand. Though earth holds many splendors, wherever I may die, I know to what brown country my homing thoughts will fly. School children would be better informed if they learned history and poetry instead of junk science.
How many years until the world ends again? We have 12 years left to cut emissions by at least 50%, if not more. And for everyone who wants to make a joke about that, you may laugh, but your grandkids will not.
Alternating drought, flood, and fire is the normal climate of Australia, and always has been. It's unfortunate that none of the adults surrounding Greta are mature or responsible enough to give her a proper education. Visit Toto on the web at realclimatescience.com. He's been pulling back the curtain on junk science and propaganda for a long time.